Anyway, shall
I'm
we?
recording. It's show 2. Congratulations, Dan Rafael, on your new show. What's it, Impact Boxing?
The Impact Network, which actually had signed deals to do some live boxing that began this past February, and had made an announcement to do probably another, I think it was another 9 or 10 shows for the remainder of the year, which obviously several of them have been postponed because of what's happening with the coronavirus. But part of that was they wanted to do an interview show with boxing celebrities and boxing champions and boxing contenders and that sort of stuff. And I signed a contract a few days ago to be the host of the show, and we'll start taping probably later this week and see how it goes. We'll have a few shows that are set, and our first guest for when the first show airs, which I believe is May 8th on the Impact Network, will be none other than the Mayweather Promotions CEO, Leonard Ellerby.
Nice, brilliant. Well, Leonard's very interesting. Listen, if you need an overseas contributor, you know where I am.
Absolutely.
But hey, 8 shows, 50 grand a show. You've got your ESPN contract sorted. Well done.
You're making a lot more than they're paying me, but that's okay. To talk to the boxing folks and basically see how they're doing during this lockdown situation, see what their plans are. And, it's geared, I think, more towards a general mainstream audience, so we can maybe delve a little bit into their backgrounds and, not so much the minutia of their next fight, so to speak. We'll have fun with it for sure. Absolutely.
Like we will with these every few days. So you will have seen, as I'm going to host these things, I'll throw the questions out. You will have seen that Dillian Whyte, noisy guy that he is all the time, keeping himself very busy on social media during the lockdown, doing a good job of it, frankly, keeping himself relevant, wants to fight clearly, would have been fighting in the next couple of weeks against Alexander Povetkin. Anyway, here in the UK would have been a big event, Dan. Kind of saying that if Deontay Wilder's injured and the Anthony Joshua fight with Fury isn't pushed forward, he really ought to get the fight with the WBC champion Tyson Fury. I kind of see where he's coming from. Do you?
Absolutely. Again, there's a lot of ifs in that scenario. But if Deontay Wilder, who divulged last week that he had surgery on a biceps injury following the rematch with Tyson Fury, if for whatever reason he's unable to go whenever they're able to try to reset that third fight, and Fury is in need of another opponent, he absolutely should fight a Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte is the WBC's interim champion, for what that's worth, which is what it makes him as the mandatory challenger.
Yeah.
It's a pretty significant fight. It's a very interesting fight. It's a good fight, certainly a big fight for the UK. Dillian Whyte has waited a long time to get a shot at the real belt. He's just as worthy as any contender out there. And I think if you ask boxing fans and you said, rank the top heavyweights, most people in whatever order they would select, they would probably put Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, and as their top 3 in whatever order they pick. I think by and large, most people would put Dillian Whyte there as number 4, and so he absolutely deserves the opportunity. And I would obviously be down for that fight for sure.
You look at it as well. He had a good win over Joseph Parker in a thriller last year. I mean, I was ringside doing radio commentary on it actually for Talk Sport and writing for the Telegraph, and it was a real thriller of a fight. I'm sure it looked good on TV from the US.
Oh, tremendous fight. I mean, Dillian Whyte is often in excellent fights. And I know he's supposed to have the interim title defense against Povetkin in July. I hope they can have it, but I remain a little skeptical about how that gets done, given what's happening. But hopefully by the time we get to that point in the summer, that they'll be able to start having these fights again.
Incidentally, I spoke to Robert Smith, as I do every couple of weeks, really. Robert Smith, the General Secretary of the British Boxing Board of Control today, and they are looking potentially at boxing behind closed doors mid-June to early July, which is sensible, but maybe not even championship fights, just 5 or 6 fights in one venue. Warren and Hearn, probably the promoters, Sky and BT Sport probably doing it, Dan. No ring card girls. See, we have a referee judging if it's 10-round fights.
That's 3 less people that need to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Just to ease it back. So, but still, that's still, party to regulations by government, whether it's doable, all the medical people there. What happens if someone gets cut? Do you know what I mean? Is that the end of the bout? I think it is at the moment,
Well, I don't know why it would be the end of the bout. I mean, they can still allow their cornermen to go back and do their work on it. What I would be concerned about is more than a cut, is that if somebody were to suffer the kind of injury that would require them to be taken to a hospital,
Oh, that's the bigger, yeah.
The medical professionals who are going to be dealing, obviously, with people who are ill with this disease. The other thing that I'm still not clear about in terms of the timing is, let's say that the British board is good to go and they theoretically could be involved in regulating fights in that time frame, perhaps the same in the United States, is you have to, the fighters and their teams and the promoters have to know exactly when, because even if boxers are staying in condition as best as they can during their quarantines, lockdowns, whatever, they still need to have at least a few weeks. I mean, to actually go to the real gym with their trainers, with sparring partners, and do an actual weeks of training. You got to get it in.
Well, all of that. And listen, what Warren and Hearn and Robert Smith are probably looking at the moment, DAZN, Fox, ESPN, Al Heyman and his crew, Bob Arum and Oscar De La Hoya, who are the major people, I would say, in America, roughly. Lou DiBella, you can include a few others. That's exactly what they'll be looking to do as well. It wouldn't surprise me to see them bringing back boxing in some form in very early July. Some form. Do you know what I mean? Just make it TV, you know?
There was this past weekend on Saturday night.
Nicaragua.
In Nicaragua, exactly.
They get sprayed down.
They did. They had a club card. It was headlined by 8-rounder, a few 6-rounders and 4-rounders. They had the fans that were allowed in, very distant, so it was not a full arena, but they had, several feet between them. The referee wore a mask. I mean, it seemed a little contrived. I'm not sure that when you're that close that it's that necessarily a good thing. But obviously, we'll see in a couple of weeks as this thing happens to take a few weeks to incubate, whether anybody got ill from that situation.
Exactly.
I mean,
but right now, as of last weekend, Nicaragua rules the boxing world. Look, let me move on. Let me move on to the next question. Talking about behind closed doors.
Yes.
Josh Taylor in the last couple of days, might have even been today, saying, "Oh my God, I can't fight behind closed doors. It'd be like glorified sparring." And Terence Crawford, interestingly, came up with something, didn't he?
Well, Crawford had the opinion that, while he wouldn't be a fan of fighting behind closed doors, that if he was going to fight behind closed doors, he would want more money, making the point that part of his compensation, besides his guaranteed purse for many of his events, is he gets a piece of the pie in terms of what they sell in terms of the gate revenue.
Yeah.
Is a popular draw at home in Nebraska. He may have a similar agreement with fights that are not in Nebraska, for example, when he has fought in places like New York City. That seems to be, I understand where he's coming from, but it also seems a little short-sighted because, I think some of these fighters are going to have to probably take, and promoters for that matter, and managers, to take less money because there is not going to be any gate revenue from these events. And so, where is the money going to come from? I mean, you get to a certain point where, if you're a fighter and you're used to making, $1 million, are you just going to throw away the opportunity because, they want you to take 750? It's going to be an interesting discussion between boxers and their handlers about redoing whatever economics there are for these fights, because there's clearly going to be less money. The TV networks that pay much of the freight, it's not like they're about to raise the amount of money that they're going to pay for these events, because they're having problems also because there's lack of other sports events that create their revenue. So it's going to be interesting. I understand where Crawford's coming from. I think it's a short-sighted point. He's entitled to that view. In terms of what Josh Taylor said, I've talked to some other boxers too about fighting behind closed doors, that they feed off that intensity. I was talking to Daniel Jacobs for a piece I did a few days ago for boxingscene.com. And Daniel Jacobs was talking about how whether he's being cheered or booed, he feeds off the intensity of the crowd. And he just had a hard time, not that he's opposed to doing it if necessary, but had a hard time envisioning what it would be like to do that in front of, basically no fans.
Hey, look, would Ward-Gatti trilogy fights have been what they were in front of nobody? Actually, maybe they would have been, but you don't know with those two. But what I'm saying is, and we feel it as well. I need to ask you, because I was thinking about this, because we have to cover enough bloody fights off TV where we can't be everywhere in the world. Like if we're in Vegas if I'm in Vegas on a Saturday and there's a big fight back in the UK, but I wanted to be there for Canelo and Mayweather, but there was a big fight back in the UK. It's not the same writing 500 words off a TV screen as being there in the energy of the place with people screaming all around you and Mike Coppinger trying to elbow you and asking you what's going on all the time, or rather telling you what's going on when you can see it with your own eyes anyway, and he's half wrong half the time anyway. So, it's...
It's going to be a whole different world.
But listen, I've said it many times. I have been at fights where I have not slept for 2 days afterwards because I've received so much adrenaline from the event. You know the feeling. You and I are still up at 9 o'clock in the morning, writing, doing radio, TV after an event in Vegas, and like we don't know how.
I couldn't tell you the number of events I have covered in places like Las Vegas or New York City or wherever, where I literally haven't gone to sleep after the fight because I've had like an early flight or an early train or whatever. And you're so wired up, you just stay up and, you work,
you do radio, it's easy.
Yeah.
And
you're writing or you're hanging out or whatever. You're just wired. You're talking about the fight. You can't go to sleep.
But it's like one of those, it's like the boxers are saying, even now, what is it? When I'm getting into week 7, I think at the moment, week 6 or week 7, I'm actually craving being at a big event.
Yeah, me too.
And I this morning I spoke to my father and he said, so what would you have been doing in these 6 weeks? And I listed, I was back and forth America 4 times. I was just about to go and do a Bellator event in San Jose, come back and do London TV. And then it was Usyk and Chisora. It was Whyte and Povetkin. Then into June with Fury, with Pulev.
We'd be getting ready for the Canelo fight right now.
The Canelo.
Saunders or, that was a big Las Vegas fight, obviously.
Yeah. Well, no, I was going to do Whyte and Povetkin here rather than go for that. But I could have gone for BJ Saunders. The reason was work. I had 4 days with William Hill where I'm doing kind of TV shows for them every day. But I went through it with my dad and he went, oh my God. And I realized that in the course of, I looked over the days we've been out and I looked over the few weeks ahead. And I think over 45 days, I'd have been like 8 at home.
Yeah. Look, we would have just had a fight that a lot of people were looking forward to, at least the hardcore fans, was an ESPN Plus event with Inoue against Casemiro in the bantamweight. The next week was going to be the Canelo fight. Obviously, the fights in June that were going to be coming up, whether Triple G fighting or the big fights in Britain that you mentioned with Povetkin and Chisora, Usyk, Dillian Whyte. I mean, there was a lot of interesting matchups, not to mention, Luke Campbell, against Fortuna.
That was last week.
That was supposed to be the 17th.
I know what I was going to do. Go to New York on the Wednesday and do the UFC build-up, which was Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Right.
Do their press conference on the Thursday. Get on a train to Maryland, down near you.
Come down, visit me.
Visit on the morning, 2.5 hours. Do the fight. Record my show with Adam for Talk Sport on the train we were going to do on the way back.
And now we're sitting in
UFC on the Saturday night. Then I was going to San Francisco on the Sunday. But you know what? I think it's this rest, if you can call it that, because we're still working.
Yeah.
It's the appreciation. Every day I try, before I go to sleep, say I'm thankful for one big thing in that day. Do you know what I mean? And my one big thing today is you, baby.
Thank you.
Look, let's
All right, what else we got?
Right.
What else we got?
I tell you who's been a bit of a star of the lockdown is Mike Tyson. He's done quite a lot. People are hanging on his every word. He's such a grown man these days. Because he looks outside boxing from within and he looks inside from without. And he knows that all he really was a destructive fighter. But he's a much bigger human being now and appreciates what other people do with their success. But I think it is fascinating what he's thinking of doing, isn't it?
Well, he has been, number one, he's been awfully charitable. And his name has been out there more than maybe usual from the standpoint of his boxing, because at least in terms of like on ESPN, they've shown these blocks of repeat fights. They have shown over the last few weeks a few times his fights against Michael Spinks.
Yeah.
His fight against, obviously, Buster Douglas, which he lost, but was a great fight. The fight that he had against Larry Holmes, they've shown some of those fights, so it's gotten a little attention. But there has been his part about trying to raise money, but also he's talked about in recent days about getting back in the gym. He's like 53, getting some kind of fighting shape and conducting exhibitions to raise money to help fight, to help some of the first responders and the people that are down on their luck because of this situation. And to think that here we are all these years after Tyson's career, so many controversies that, he's actually like almost a voice of reason and somebody that gives people comfort is sort of amazing to me. And I'm glad because he seems in a good place and, has overcome so much, will freely admit he didn't always do the right thing. He obviously has a checkered past, but people can change their points of view and do good things beyond when the time was happening when maybe they weren't doing the right thing. So, credit to Tyson for doing that.
Absolutely. What do you think about him doing an exhibition bout? It would
Why
generate
not?
interest, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, it's I don't think anybody's gonna take it serious as like it's a real serious fight. But I can't think of a boxing fan or even sports fans, given how big of a name Mike is, if you knew that he was gonna do an exhibition that was gonna help raise money, and whoever was on the other side of the ring with him was, of a similar age or condition, why not?
So, last subject today. You were there. I wasn't, because I think I was covering. There was a big event in the London Marathon. I'd been seconded by the Telegraph to stay here, and I remember watching it on a really, really rough stream. And I'm talking 8 years ago, I think it was. 9 years ago. And it was 9, was it? Yeah. It was Carl Froch against Jermaine Taylor. Is it Atlantic City? It was, wasn't it?
No, it was at the Foxwoods Resort in Connecticut.
Foxwoods, Connecticut, yeah. Where it's a great venue as well. I remember seeing Nassim Ahmed fight there against. He
fought there against
Augie Sanchez.
Now, interestingly, you mentioned that it was the same casino, but when Naz fought Augie, a fight that I covered, they fought in the casino folks would close down their bingo hall, which seated many thousands.
I was there with you.
Right. Now, because the bingo hall generates so much money,
yeah,
they built a separate facility.
That's right.
Like right on the property, but another theater style thing where they would host other events, so they could leave the bingo hall open to make the money.
Right.
And then fights like Carl against Jermaine Taylor, the first fight between Andre Berto and Victor Ortiz, which is a sensational fight. They put it in this new theater, but when Froch and Taylor had their fight, oh, what a memorable fight that was. Just, mainly because of the comeback from Froch. So it's the anniversary. So I think that's why we were talking about it. He had come over to the States to defend his super middleweight title. You had Jermaine Taylor, who was coming up into the super middleweight division, had defeated Bernard Hopkins 2 times. He had suffered loss, but, was thought to be, a live dog in that fight against Froch.
Totally.
And not only was he a live dog, but he was winning the very handily. And, we all know what a great chin Carl Froch has. I think to this day, that may only be the only time maybe you correct me if I'm wrong. Jermaine knocked him down in round 3 in that fight. I think to this day, that was the only time Carl was ever off his feet in a fight.
No, he was down in one other fight.
It was rare though, for sure.
Oh no, it was rare. It was only down twice. No, Groves put him down, didn't he?
Okay. So, but Taylor knocked him down in round 3. Carl was trailing the entire fight, kind of badly, if you ask me, and mounted an unbelievable rally in the 12th round, knocked Jermaine Taylor down, and then stopped him with 12, 14 seconds left in the fight to keep his title. And that really helped Carl do 2 things. It helped him make a name for himself in America because it was such an exciting fight with such an explosive kind of ending. And it also set him up. It made, I think, that was one of the fights I think that had the people at Showtime really deciding to now go forward with what they dubbed the World Boxing Super Series, or the Super
Sixes, yeah, that's
Super
2
Six.
years.
Super Six. And Carl, his next fight was in that tournament where he made it to the finals. He lost to Andre Ward, but it was a good performance until he got to that fight. And but the Taylor fight, I think, is what was the building block to what was a terrific tournament.
I remember so often people like yourself and other esteemed journalists in America asking me, how is Froch not a big star in the UK? Because he was a bigger star in America for a while than he eventually became in the UK in that final run that he had under Eddie Hearn against Lucien Boutte, where he said he was going to retire if he didn't win. He was tremendous that night against
both Groves fights.
The 2 Groves fights, the return fight with Mikhail Kessler, and there was one other. I can't remember the name of the guy now.
Well, he fought Yusuf Mack was one of the fights.
Yusuf Mack. Those were the last 5. Yusuf Mack as well. And they were brilliant performances, the last 5 of his. He came back against Groves. And it wasn't really till the Boutte fight. Because the fight before Pascal the fight before Jermaine Taylor fought Jean Pascal here, 5 million people watched it on TV, on network, terrestrial as we call it, TV. Yeah. And then they pulled the plug on their boxing shows. So he had the momentum, and then he was gone. That fight with Jermaine Taylor was on, I think, a channel called Premier Sports or something. 15,000 views.
Well, here was a main event on Showtime. So, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was probably doing, near 1 million viewers. But it was, look, Carl Froch, for my money, if number one, he should be in the Hall of Fame. He will be someday.
He will be.
But his great run that got him to the point where you can say he should be in the Hall of Fame, it probably started with the Pascal fight.
Oh, definitely. 12 world title fights in a row.
But here's the thing: if you look at Carl's career, he probably, for that time period, and particularly in those weight divisions between 168 and 160, where he fought.
No, it was all 168.
Yeah, 168. I was thinking Pascal was the one that had moved up.
It was still 168. Yeah.
For that time frame and that weight division, Carl Froch fought literally everybody you could fight.
Everybody.
2 fights with Mikhail Kessler, 2 fights with George Groves.
Yeah.
Carl was the man. Carl and I, we had our little issues here and there, but and now we're good now, but I have massive respect for what he did, what he accomplished, and the fact that he was willing to travel. First fight with Mikhail Kessler, fought overseas in Kessler's hometown, and he also had the fight here in America against Andre Ward, the fight in America here against Jermaine Taylor. So, you got to give him all the credit in the world.
Listen, he fought in Helsinki. I went to Helsinki. It was -10. He fought Arthur Abraham. It was a brilliant performance. And Abraham was still dangerous then. When he fought Kessler the first time, he had to go through a volcanic ash cloud with his pregnant wife in a small plane to get into the fight because he wanted it to go ahead. Listen, he's a modern British great. For me, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you have to see who else is on the ballot.
No, he's got to be in. Is there anything but an insult?
No, listen, I'm not saying he doesn't belong in, but when you vote in the Hall of Fame, they give you the list of guys and women the women's are on a separate ballot. Women's ballot is just But then the men's modern ballot, you can only vote for a certain number. I think it's 5 boxers you can vote for, and they elect 3 of the top 3 vote getters. So if you have 5 people, now take, for example, the ballot that we could be looking at next year. It's almost an impossible task because you're talking about new additions to several fighters that should already be considered on the ballot. Next year alone, you're looking at the inclusion now of Vladimir Klitschko, Miguel Cotto, Floyd Mayweather, and Andre Ward.
You can't put Floyd in. No, you can't put Floyd in.
What are you talking about?
He fought in 2017.
No, but that's the point, though. The Boxing Hall of Fame last year changed the eligibility rules.
Oh, did they? It's not 5 years anymore. No,
now it's 3 years.
Okay, got you.
So all those guys had their last fights in that year.
Yeah.
Ward, Klitschko, and Cotto. So if you can only vote for 5, but only 3 get elected, unless they get above, I think it's like 80%. How do you vote for Froch over those 4 guys?
Okay, listen, save all this for your Impact show. It's too complicated. Look, because we haven't got time, because we've got to keep these short, because we know less is more for our guys. Look, let's do 3 things, right?
Okay.
Brilliant anniversary that we're just celebrating. Quick answers on these, Dan. Froch versus Canelo. Froch loses on a tiny split points decision.
At 168 we're talking about?
Yeah, 168, yeah.
I would probably have to pick Canelo also, and I agree with you. It's a close, tough fight, and nothing.
Great fight.
Kind of got to go with Canelo close, though.
Imagine some of the exchanges in that fight.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
look, because they both had great chins also, and Froch would be coming
exactly.
Canelo is a terrific counterpuncher. That's a great fight.
Canelo #1 in the world right now?
I have him #1 in the world.
Me too. Good. Apart from Tyson Fury is always #1. No. Canelo's #1. Froch and Golovkin. Golovkin's got to come up.
Yeah, I mean, he fought at 164.
Yeah, Froch wins in a razor-tight one again this time.
I think I might lean towards Froch at 168. Again, they both have terrific chins. That's a tough one also. I mean,
of course it is.
I mean, I just don't know. We don't know how Triple G's power translates yet to 168. I guess if you force me to pick and that weight division, I might go very slightly towards Froch.
And Froch Calzaghe. I'll give mine very quickly, okay?
Okay.
Calzaghe might be down early, but he comes back and he wins by 2 or 3 rounds against Froch, who's frustrated like he was against Ward.
I agree with you about that. And I know when Carl, was looking for a big fight and Joe had just retired, he was calling Joe out. And obviously they just missed each other. Joe could have come back, and it would have been probably less than a year layoff at that point, or maybe slightly more than a year at the most. And that would have been a huge fight over in the UK for sure. I would have loved to see it, but if you make me pick that fantasy fight, I'm going with Calzaghe in a close fight.
Now listen, what's for dinner?
No idea.
You say that, well, by Wednesday, I want your lovely wife to have given you the menu.
I don't know, man.
No. I want to know in the next
show. Tell me, you're the one that's cooking all your potatoes and
No, let me tell you what's for my dinner. I'm just about to have it.
By the way, you're 5 hours ahead of me, so you should be getting ready for dinner.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to have my second bicycle ride of the day. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to set you too many tasks now, but as the shows go on, I'm going to set you tasks. Wednesday, I want to know what your lovely wife is making for dinner for you and the boy and herself. Tonight, I am having chili and honey glazed chicken.
Oh, nice.
Steamed sugar snaps and some lightly crunchy boiled sprouts.
Sounds pretty good. I might have to come over.
Yeah, with a nice gravy and a little bit of sourdough sliced. Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, listen, I'll see you Wednesday, hopefully. Yeah.
I will see you Wednesday.
Yeah, and I want that menu for Wednesday.
I'll think about it.
Listen, it's always a pleasure. Stay well. Thanks.
All right,
thanks for joining me. See you later, D-Love.
All right, see you later.